If you know me, if you know my work, you know that I believe in the paranormal. And you know that I especially believe that there is no such thing as coincidence. Today's show is going to be a perfect example of that. Oh my goodness. Wait till you hear the story that unfolds in front of you today. We are so fortunate to have a wonderful guest who wrote a book called I'll Be Seeing You. My name is Vin Dacquino. Our guest is Loretta DiLeo. Loretta, let's talk writing. Strange. You came into my life recently, but you were kind of in my life a long time because you had a relationship with Dr. Jasper, who was quite an extraordinary human being. Loretta, tell us your story.
I met Dr. Jasper in 1978. I had been laid up for 5 years with a bad back. When my right leg began to atrophy and I got what's known as a foot drop, my orthopedic surgeon said he couldn't wait any longer, that he had to do some surgery before I deteriorated further. I had a dream that night, and I was walking down the street, and there was an old man standing on the corner. And as I walked by the old man, he looked at me and he yelled, "Hey lady, if I were you, I'd see a chiropractor." And I woke up. Now, the only time that I ever heard the word chiropractor, the word quack followed it. So I was already considered by my family a weirdo.
Welcome to the club.
Well, I had 3 older brothers, so they would always go around putting their hand over my mouth all those years. And I just couldn't resist. It was such a powerful, realistic dream that I went and got the phone book out. And I got the phone book out, and then I looked at the book, and I said, well, how do you pick a quack? So what I did was look at the phone book and say, okay.
Wow.
And that's where my finger landed. I put the phone book away, and I waited a while. Then I went back, and I put the number down. Let me write it down. So I wrote it down, and within the next hour, I called. I figured it was going to be 2 weeks before I could get an appointment like it was for my orthopedist. When I called, the girl said, you can come in this afternoon. And I was in such pain that day that I couldn't drive. And I had a standard shift at the time, so I couldn't step on the gas, clutch, everything with all the back pain, so I called a cab. When I got to the front of the building, I noticed there were stairs. I tried to get the cab because I couldn't get up the stairs.
Wow.
I didn't know there was a back door at the time. So I got up the stairs, I went in. When he came in the back, I didn't even use my real name.
Wow.
I used the name that I was going to use for writing, which was Renee Kama.
Oh, wow.
Because I always loved to write. So when I went in, and he was sitting at his desk, and he looked up at me, and he said, you're late. And I'm never late. So I figured it was a mess up at the front desk, so I didn't say anything. And 6 months after I went to work for him, he said to me, how come you never asked me why? I wanted to know if you were late. So I said, I figured it was a mistake. He said, was it no mistake? I sent for you 6 months ago. And he said, the minute you walked in, I knew you were the one I wanted.
Wow.
So that's how I began, and I began as his receptionist.
He was quite an unusual man.
Absolutely.
And what is amazing is that 30 years ago, longer than 30 years ago, I was best friends with Roy Campanella. In fact, in the recent biography by Neil Langto, several pages have been dedicated to my relationship with Roy. Roy chose his friends carefully, and I'm proud to say I was one of his chosen. Also amazingly, so was Dr. Jasper. And I had the wonderful pleasure of actually knowing this man. It was in those days when chiropractic was just becoming accepted. They were doctors, and we had such wonderful times learning about all of these things he was getting into. And now, all these years later, I meet you, and you tell me that Dr. Jasper is a friend of yours, a regular visitor, but he's dead.
Yes.
I'm not surprised. And I'm not surprised that this connection has come about. It's sort of Roy revisiting me, and it's Mark, I called him Mark, revisited me as well. Tell me this journey that you've been on. You went there for treatment, ended up working for the man.
He changed my life.
He changed your life. Tell me about that change.
Because I had always had experiences that were out of the ordinary, I never said anything. I learned to be quiet a little bit because you didn't want, especially when you're a teenager, you don't want to be an outsider. So this one day, as his patient, laying on the table, he started telling me these little stories. And these little stories he began to tell me were always what was going on in my life at the time, and he would either give me a way to get through it or a way to overcome it. So this one day, I was laying on the table, and all of a sudden, I was picking up thoughts that I knew weren't mine and visions that weren't mine. And when I did that, he bent. I figured I'm going to try what he did. So I told him a story. And when I was finished with the story, he had a favorite name for everybody that was really his special ladies, and he called every one of them bubbies. So he reached down, whispered in my ear, "Bubby, how does it feel to know that you were right and they were wrong?" And from that moment on, my life was different.
So he was a healer not only of bodies, but of spirits and minds and souls.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Some of the things that I watched him do over the years was incredible. I named one story in the book about we had a minister come in who worked for IBM as well, and he had a younger brother who had been deaf since he was 3 years old. He brought him up from North Carolina to stay with him, and while he was with him, he had gotten all these allergies from being up north in opposed to being down in the Carolinas. So he brought his brother in for Dr. Jasper to work with. And when he was there, at that point I was still the receptionist, so I was sitting out in the waiting room, and the other two doctors that he enters as students were in the office with us, motioned for me to come in. And there he sat on the table, and I watched Dr. Jasper give him a cervical adjustment, and I was witness to him hearing for the first time since he was 3 years old.
Wow.
It was an incredible experience.
So he was a healer.
He was a healer. He was a healer.
Now, my new book is called Emails to a Paranormal. What I do in this book is try to explore life after death. And I try to pose questions that teenagers might pose about what comes next. Loretta, what comes next?
Well, from what he explained to me is that the first thing that you go through once you transition is your whole life is judged, but it's judged by the person. He said there is no denial, there's no running away, and he said one of the hardest things to do is self-forgiveness.
Because no one's perfect.
Oh, no one's perfect. Nobody's perfect that's here. You're not supposed to be here.
Yeah.
You were imperfectly perfect.
What was amazing is that his relationship with Roy. Now, Roy Campanella was a very unusual person, too. You may know this story. I know you know the story. But Roy Campanella was a Dodger catcher. He was with the Brooklyn Dodgers. He was the best catcher of his time.
I was a Dodger fan. I know all about it.
Well, in January of '58, he was just getting ready to go to L.A. The Dodgers had been sold. His career was going to blossom, even though he was up in his age. Never happened. That January, on DeSoris Lane in Long Island, he had a horrible accident, ended up paralyzed the rest of his life. I find this so unbelievable that he made this relationship with a chiropractor, and yet he was paralyzed from his chest down. Their relationship was very unusual because he was a healer for Roy, and Roy probably was a healer for him. I learned so much from Roy about what life is, and that you have to go on regardless of what happens to you. You have to have a will to live. Roy's book was It's Good to Be Alive. The two of them together made music. They understood spiritual value, that your life here on earth in this body is a drop in eternity. Now, Dr. Jasper has come back to you. Talk to us about his first visit and your realization that when he said, "I'll be seeing you," he meant it.
He sang it.
Wow. Tell us about that.
Well, just before his passing, we had done a new energetic therapy called reconnective healing. It is based on string theory, quantum theories, and it's supposed to be a fifth dimensional energy. I went to California and Texas to learn it from Dr. Eric Pearl. In order to take the third level of this, you have to be reconnected, which is taking the lines in the acupuncture system of our bodies, connecting them to the ley lines of the earth, and then out into the universe. So we had done this, didn't know anything about it. It was still all new to both of us, and he passed right after that. And when I was down in my downstairs kitchen, it was about a week after his funeral. But the week before that, I have a young protege whose name is Claudine, who has psychic abilities. The day after his funeral, she called me on the telephone, and she said to me, "I saw Dr. Jasper at the funeral parlor yesterday." And she said, in his hand he held a rose, and as he spoke to me, the rose blossomed, and he said, "You have to give Loretta a message for me." She said, "But I feel like a fool saying it doesn't make any sense." I said, "Claudine, you have to tell me." She said, "He told me to tell you he slipped out the back door." That statement was our signal. Anytime there was trouble, he used to run upstairs on me. So I learned to get there faster than he could get there. And the first time I did it, when he stopped, he busted out laughing, and he had the, I'm sure, as you know, if you knew him, he had the most gorgeous
we
laughter.
had some wild times. I have to tell you the truth.
I can imagine. And he said to me, "That's it." I said, "That's it what?" He said, "Anything happens to either one of us, that's going to be our signal." I slipped out the back door.
Wow.
So when she told me that, of course, I was absolutely so excited. But then the next part that sunk in, why didn't he tell me? I was mortally wounded. But as things began to happen, I realized how much I was doubting. As much as you think you believe.
Yeah.
That
there is time of doubt.
Yes. Well, you know what he said? He said the Catholics almost had it right. There is an original sin, and it's doubt.
That's right.
Doubt is the sin.
Doubt. There you go. Do you know the last time I saw Dr. Jasper was Roy's funeral?
That's the last time he flew.
1993.
That's right.
We were in California. I was with my wife, the children. We stayed at Roy's house. Roxy was uncomfortable to stay alone. My daughter slept in that bed in Roy's place to give her comfort. And we stayed at the house, and Mark was there to say goodbye. was sad. I remember the day that Roy told us that he was going to move to California. Dr. Jasper was there. He cried. And I said to Roy, kidding, not funny. I said, grown man crying. He said, if you understand friendship, you understand why he's crying. I said, Roy, I'm crying too. You know, and although he could do it openly because he was a very sensitive man, I relish your relationship with him. He was a very special person, and I can't believe that we both know him. And I can't believe when you told me about this life after death experience, it was someone I knew.
Oh, last night when we were talking, that was too much.
I know. We should tell. We didn't know this. I just put it together like about a week ago, and I couldn't wait to tell her. I was going to wait for the show and spring it on her. I couldn't do it. So last night I said to her, guess what? I know him. I know him. I've spent time with him. I socialized with him. I knew his wife, Christine, loved her. My wife loved her. They were such good people.
Absolutely.
Tell us about these experiences. Now, he's still with you.
He was with me last night when you called.
Oh, no. Well, I should have said hello.
He heard you.
I'm sure he did. I'm sure Roy did too. I still talk to him. He taught me some things about life that no one could teach you. You have to have been there. Roy was special too because here was a man who had everything.
I'm just taken away in a moment.
In a moment, his wife, his children, his career, his dignity, his legs, all of these things at once. I have actual audio tapes. Roy and I talked just the way you talked. We put a tape recorder between us.
So you could always
When
have
I
it.
first met him, I told him I wanted to write a book. He said, well, then don't be wishy-washy. Let's get started. And from the first time we met, we had tape recorders. I taped 13 tapes. One of the things that we taped, I said, Roy, you lost all those things. Why didn't you just reach over, get the pills, take them, and end it? He said, as only he could, Dacquino. I was paralyzed. How was I going to reach those pills? And I said, oh my God. He says, and I wanted to live more than I wanted to die. Now, these tapes guide my life. They actually do. Because the strength to keep going. Doctors told him that the paralysis that he had, it would be lucky if he lived to be 55. He lived to his 70s.
Yes.
And he touched so many hearts. And his courage marked the way for so many people. That's why I'm not surprised that one of his closest friends was Dr. Jasper.
Perfect.
And it's amazing that the two of them are back here with us, right here and now, without question. So, tell me about you as a healer. You are, in fact, a healer, yes?
Yes.
Yeah. So
I do energetic healing.
Okay. And you actually have clients, and you have people that come to you?
I've had clients, some of my clients have been with me for 30 years.
Wow.
A lot of them. In fact, I took care of Roy Campanella's daughter.
Oh, my God. Princess?
Princess.
Oh,
absolutely.
My God.
Yes. Yes, Ruthie is a great girl. She's a great girl.
Yep. Ruth, named after his first wife, Ruth.
Yes.
Yeah, Ruth he called her Princess, and she's
She's
a
a
princess.
She's a beautiful human being.
Yeah.
I absolutely
and
adore her.
I unfortunately didn't know them as well, because when I spent most of the time with Roy, he was with Roxy,
right.
and John D, and it was a different relationship, and Joni, but I didn't know them, and I didn't meet them, all of them, Roy Jr. It was interesting how he was able to raise all those children in a wheelchair.
Yes.
And what he taught us is that you have to go with what you've got. you know? And you don't worry about where yesterday is, you worry about what you have to do today. So in your healing, what do you say and do to help people live again?
I just work with the energetic system. The more sensitive you become to these subtle energies that are created by the body, the chakras create a kind of energy, the meridians create yet another kind of energy, the aura has yet another kind of energy, and I go by what I feel. I take a lot of different things that I've learned over the past 35 years, and you develop your own style, your own way of working with the energies.
So you teach people to become sensitive to their own energies?
Yes, even if they're not aware that they're becoming. And I think that's the greatest thing, because you put people in touch with their own bodies,
So
because we're not.
is it kinetic or is it vocal? I mean, is it what you say or what
No,
you
I
do?
don't say anything. I don't say anything. I just work with the body, with the feel, and use those energy fields to affect the physical bodies.
So are you, in a sense, a chiropractor?
No.
No, it's just like dealing with the energies inside the body.
Yeah, and that's why I call myself an energetic therapist.
Wow. I know that
Reiki is energy
yes.
work. Polarity balances is an energy work. Then the energies have, according to everything that said, we're moving into another dimension on this planet. A higher dimension, from the third dimensional experience to a fourth and fifth. And the more and the closer and the deeper we move into that, he said that stories like ours was going to become commonplace. And
Wow.
it's happening. There's other books.
So you believe there's going to be a connect
Oh, there's
to
going to
the
be a
life
big
after
connect.
death.
There's a big connect. It's already happening.
Yeah, that's my emails to paranormal are all about that.
That's-
It's this boy who loses his father in a head-on collision. The father has the ability, and so does the son, and the son can't connect. And through this book, we understand why he can't connect, and we understand what troubled souls are, and seeking the light. And by the end of the book, we understand, I hope, what finding the light is all about. And understanding that this life that we have here is only a small step
Drop in the bucket.
in eternity. That this really is a learning experience that will help us move forward.
Yeah, where
And some
spirits
of us
have-
move forward slowly or slower than others. Wow. So you have clients, you bring those clients to a new level. When was that new level clear to you?
Within myself. Once you know it can happen for you.
You have to find peace within yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And Dr. Jasper helped me find that. And then we used to bounce our energy back and forth together, and that made us even stronger.
Tell us a little bit more about these appearances that you have.
He not only appeared to me, there's at least 30 other people that he
Wow,
appeared to.
is that right?
So there was no doubt that it was my experience alone. My son, my oldest son, one day we went outside after a big rainstorm, and we're standing out there, and he said to me, "Ma, do you really believe all this stuff you're spouting?" I said, "I don't have a choice. I either believe all of it or none of it."
There you go.
So he said, "Well, if you really believe he could do that, show you a rainbow like that driving to work," because that's the front of my book, is the rainbow I seen on my drive down that
Wow.
morning before I found it, because unfortunately I was the one who found him when he passed.
Oh, wow.
So that was rough. But from the minute I seen that rainbow, I knew.
Yeah.
All the way down, I knew what had happened. I didn't want to know, but I was planning on what I was going to do with his dog, what I was going to do with this, because it wasn't, I just knew.
And at
You know
that
that
time,
inner
his wife
knowing.
had already passed,
She had been,
so he was
she had
on his
been
own?
gone 7 years. Oh, please, yes, he was on his own for 7 years.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
I got calls. How do you cook this? How do I start the washing machine?
Yeah. Before I did Hauntings of the Hudson River Valley, I was a skeptic. But there are so many coincidences that can't be coincidences.
Anymore.
They're signs, and it's a different way of thinking. And you have to understand that so many things come together in different ways. You did not come into my life. You came back into my life.
I understand.
You are Dr. Jasper. You are Roy. You are my guiding lights. And I'm hoping that these are all signs to help me be a better me and to help me understand what this journey is all about. We've had great philosophers for years try to tell us what this journey is. And nobody has given us a definitive answer on life after death. It has to come from you. It's an inner peace, an inner understanding. Is it ever clear? I'm not sure.
And maybe it's not the same for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yes.
One of the things I always say about teaching, now I taught for 35 years, and it's clear to me that my job was not to give answers. My job was to create questions and let my students find their own answers.
Well, you must have hung out with Dr. Jasper too long.
Gee, that's right. I think we had too many champagnes together. And, you know, I hear you, and I think that they are my guiding lights as well. I agree with you. I don't think he's left us. I think he's going to be with us for a while. I think
He's waiting for me on a beach. He already promised me that.
wow. When he says I'll be seeing you, he means
meant
I'll
it.
be seeing you. He meant it. Well, it is absolutely a pleasure to have you here. There is life after death. There is hope. There is a light. You need to find your own light. And you need to believe that it does exist. Can this be a one-stop deal? Can there be nothing after this life? I don't think so. I want to thank you for joining us today. I want to thank you for joining us today. It has been a pleasure.
Mine. The pleasure's all been mine.
Thank you. Come back to us again, and remember, he'll be seeing us. Thank you for coming.
Oh, this was great. This was great.
It's been a pleasure. As we roll the credits, I think we need to know that we've touched some people today. I hope, and so is he. This is his way of reaching out